When a billionaire's mother screamed in terror inside a failing Brooklyn restaurant, everyone froze, except the quiet waitress who whispered words in a language that had been dead for generations. That single moment connected Clara Bennett to a blood feud she'd spent years running from, and Adrian Moretti to the woman who would either destroy his family or save it. What started as a chance encounter on a stormy November night became a battle between two broken people hiding from different versions of the same nightmare. This is their story. Before we begin, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let's go back to where it all started. The rain hit the windows of Francesca's trattoria like bullets, each drop exploding against the glass in rhythm with Clara Bennett's racing heartbeat. She'd been watching the door for 3 hours now, the way she always did, ready to slip through the kitchen exit the second anyone dangerous walked through. Nobody dangerous ever did. Just couples arguing over cold pasta, families pretending everything was fine, lonely people eating alone while pretending to read their phones. Clara wiped down table 7 for the 3rd time, her hand steady even though her mind was screaming at her to run. She'd gotten good at that over the years, looking calm while falling apart inside. "Order up, Bennett," Marco's voice cut through the kitchen noise. Not that Marco. This one was just a chef with a gambling problem and marinara stains on his apron. Clara grabbed the plates. Chicken marsala that looked like sadness covered in mushroom gravy, and carried them to table 3. The couple didn't even look at her. They never did. That was the point of being invisible. She'd perfected it. Brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup. Clothes that hung loose enough to hide her shape. Eyes that never met anyone's gaze for more than a second. In the 6 months she'd worked at Francesca's, she'd become part of the furniture. Background noise. Forgettable. Exactly what she needed to be. "Clara, you're doing it again," Sophie muttered as she passed with a tray of drinks. Sophie was 19 and still believed the world was fundamentally good. Clara envied that kind of blindness. Doing what? That thing where you stare at the door like you're expecting someone to kick it down. Clara forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just tired." "You're always tired," Sophie shook her head. "When's the last time you actually went out? Did something fun?" Fun. Clara had almost forgotten what that word meant. Fun was a luxury for people who weren't running from monsters. "I'm fine, Soph." "Really?" The lie tasted familiar on her tongue. She'd told it so many times it almost felt true. The restaurant was nearly empty now, just 2 tables left. An elderly man eating soup in the corner who came every Thursday and never spoke. And table 12, which had been reserved for 8 o'clock. It was 8:47. No shows meant Clara might actually get home before midnight. Home. Another word that didn't mean what it used to. Home was a studio apartment in Greenpoint with bars on the windows and 3 different locks on the door. Home was checking the fire escape every night before bed. Home was sleeping in your clothes in case you needed to run. Thunder cracked overhead, loud enough to rattle the cheap wine glasses. That's when the door opened. Clara felt it before she saw it. The shift in air pressure, the sudden attention from everyone in the room. She turned slowly, instinctively cataloging exits. 3 people. 2 men, 1 woman. No, wait. 1 man, 1 elderly woman, 1 child. The man wore a suit that probably cost more than Clara made in 6 months. Charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, expensive enough that it didn't need labels. He was tall, maybe 6'1", with dark hair that was wet from the rain and eyes that swept the restaurant like he was calculating its worth and finding it lacking. His mother, had to be his mother, they had the same sharp nose, clutched his arm with trembling hands. She looked terrified of something Clara couldn't see. The boy was maybe 7 or 8, wearing a smaller version of the man's suit. He looked miserable. "I'm sorry, we're about to close," Sophie started. "We have a reservation." The man's voice cut through the room like ice. "Moretti, 8 o'clock. Sophie glanced at Clara, panic in her eyes. Nobody said no to people who wore suits like that. "Of course, Mr. Moretti. Right this way." Clara stayed frozen by the kitchen door, watching. Something about this felt wrong. These people didn't belong in Francesca's. This was a neighborhood spot for people who couldn't afford anything better. People like her. These people screamed money, power, danger. The man, Moretti, scanned the room again, and for half a second his eyes landed on Clara. She felt it like a physical touch, That moment of being seen. Actually seen, not just looked at. Then it was gone. He was guiding his mother to table 5, the best table in the house, which wasn't saying much. The boy trailed behind them like he'd rather be anywhere else. Clara exhaled slowly. Just rich people slumming it. They'd eat quickly, tip badly, and leave. She'd never see them again. She was wrong about all of it. Clara, can you take table 5? Sophie whispered. They're too intimidating. That guy looks like he could buy the whole building and evict everyone just for fun. He probably could, Clara muttered, but she grabbed her notepad anyway. She approached the table carefully, professionally. Good evening. Can I start you with something to drink? The elderly woman was muttering something in Italian, her hand shaking as she gripped the edge of the table. The boy stared at his phone. The man, Moretti, looked at Clara with an expression she couldn't quite read. Tired. He looked tired. Scotch. Neat. Whatever's good. His voice was clipped, efficient. A man used to giving orders. Lemonade for my son, and hot tea for my mother. Chamomile, if you have it. Of course. Clara started to turn away. Wait. His voice stopped her. Do you speak Italian? Clara's heart stuttered. Careful. A little? Basic phrases. My mother sometimes gets confused. If she says anything to you, I'll let you know. Clara kept her voice neutral, professional. Don't engage. Don't be memorable. She escaped to the bar where Marco was counting register receipts and cursing under his breath. Those people at 5? Rich and weird, Marco grunted. That guy's Adrian Moretti. Saw him in the business section last week. Owns half of Lower Manhattan or something. Real estate development, private equity, all that money printing bullshit. Clara's hands went cold. Moretti? Yeah, why? You know him? No. The lie came automatically. Just surprised someone like that is here. Probably slumming. Rich people love pretending they're normal. Marco handed her the scotch. Get them fed and get them out. I want to lock up. Clara carried the drinks back on a tray that felt heavier than it should. Her mind was racing, sorting through fragments of memory she'd tried to bury. Moretti. That name. Where had she... No. Stop. It was a common Italian name, didn't mean anything. She set the drinks down carefully. The elderly woman, Mrs. Moretti, was still muttering, her eyes unfocused. The boy sipped his lemonade without enthusiasm. Adrian Moretti stared at the menu like it had personally offended him. Are you ready to order, or do you need a few minutes? Give us 5. He didn't look up. Clara retreated, grateful. She could feel Sophie watching her from across the room. He's hot, Sophie whispered when Clara passed her. In a scary, might murder you in your sleep kind of way. He's a customer, Soph. A customer with great bone structure and enough money to... Stop. But Sophie wasn't wrong. Adrian Moretti was attractive in that brutal, carved-from-stone way that made you think of old Roman statues. Sharp jaw, dark eyes that looked like they'd stopped believing in happy endings a long time ago, hands that seemed capable of either building empires or tearing them down. Clara had learned to recognize dangerous men. She'd spent 5 years running from them. Adrian Moretti was dangerous in a different way. The legal kind. The kind that could destroy you with a phone call instead of a fist. Order whenever you're ready, she said, passing the table again. This time, Adrian looked up, really looked. Have we met before? Every instinct in Clara's body screamed danger. No, sir. You look familiar. I just have one of those faces. She kept her voice light, forgettable. Lots of people say that. His eyes narrowed slightly like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Then his mother made a small sound, something between a whimper and a cry. The change was instant. Adrian's entire attention shifted to the elderly woman, his hand covering hers. Mama, what's wrong? Mrs. Moretti was staring at something across the room, or maybe at nothing. Her breathing had gone rapid and shallow. Mama, look at me. Adrian's voice had gone soft in a way Clara hadn't expected. You're safe. I'm right here. But Mrs. Moretti was somewhere else now, her eyes wide with terror. She started speaking rapidly in Italian, the words tumbling over each other. The boy, Adrian's son, looked embarrassed, sinking lower in his seat. Clara should have walked away, should have gotten Sophie or Marco, should have done anything except what she did next. She knelt beside Mrs. Moretti's chair, close enough to speak quietly. Signora? The elderly woman's eyes found hers, desperate and lost. And then Clara spoke in a dialect she'd sworn she'd never use again. Words her grandmother had taught her in secret late at night when the rest of the family was sleeping. A language that belonged to a village in Sicily that barely existed anymore. Words that connected Clara to a past she'd tried to erase. U foku non ti può fare malichka, si sicura. U picciotto e c'ha cutia. The fire can't hurt you here. You're safe. Your son is here with you. The restaurant went silent. Mrs. Moretti blinked, tears streaming down her face, and her breathing started to slow. She reached up with trembling fingers and touched Clara's cheek. "Tu sais," she whispered. "You know?" Clara felt Adrian staring at her with an intensity that made her skin burn. "What did you just say to her?" His voice was careful, controlled, too controlled. "I told her she was safe," Clara said quietly, standing up. Her legs felt shaky. "That you were here with her." "In what language?" Clara met his eyes for just a second, long enough to see the shock there, the recognition, the sudden sharp interest that was worse than any danger she'd ever run from. "Sicilian, old dialect. My grandmother taught me." "What was her name?" "I should get your orders." "What was your grandmother's name?" Adrian's voice had gone hard again. The momentary softness was gone. Clara took a step back. "Sir, I really need to—" "You're not from Brooklyn." It wasn't a question. "You're from—" Thunder exploded overhead, so loud that the lights flickered. Mrs. Moretti screamed. It happened so fast that Clara barely processed it. The elderly woman stood up suddenly, her chair crashing backward. She was yelling in that same ancient dialect, words about fire and blood and betrayal, her arms swinging wildly. The soup man in the corner looked terrified. Sophie had frozen by the kitchen. Marco was shouting something. And Adrian Moretti was trying to calm his mother while his son started crying. Clara didn't think. She just moved. She caught Mrs. Moretti's hands gently, speaking in that forbidden language, letting the words flow like a song her grandmother used to sing. Words about safety and family and home. Lies, mostly. Pretty lies that calmed frightened people. U passato è morto. U passato è morto. Solo l'amore rimane. The past is dead. The past is dead. Only love remains. Mrs. Moretti collapsed against Clara, sobbing. Clara held her, the stranger who somehow felt familiar, and let the elderly woman cry into her shoulder while the rain hammered the windows and the whole restaurant watched. When the storm inside finally passed, Clara helped Mrs. Moretti back into her chair. The elderly woman was exhausted now, limp and quiet. Adrian was standing very still, watching Clara like she'd just performed a magic trick he was trying to figure out. "Thank you," he said finally. The words sounded difficult for him. "It's nothing. It's not nothing." He pulled out his wallet, extracted several $100 bills, and placed them on the table. "For the disturbance, and for your kindness." "Sir, that's too much. Keep it." Clara's pride wanted to refuse. Her empty bank account made her nod. "Thank you. What's your name?" "Lie." Clara Bennett." Something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, maybe. "How long have you worked here, Clara Bennett?" 6 months? And before that?" "Different restaurants. I move around a lot." "Why?" The question was simple. The answer was complicated enough to fill books. "I like change." Adrian Moretti looked at her like he could see through every word. "My mother has episodes, panic attacks, PTSD from something that happened when she was young. Most people freeze or make it worse. You knew exactly what to do." "I've seen panic attacks before." "In that specific dialect? A dialect that's been dead for 50 years? Clara felt trapped. Every second she stood here was a second too long. "My grandmother was from Sicily, small village. She taught me before she died." "What village?" "I really should—" "What village, Clara?" The way he said her name made it sound like he knew it was fake. "Castelvetrano." Another lie. Quick, clean. "No." Adrian's voice went cold. "That dialect isn't from Castelvetrano. I'd know. My family is from Corleone." Fuck. Clara felt the world tilt. Corleone. She knew that name. Knew it the way you knew the name of your own executioner. I should go, she said, backing away. Your food? Marco can take your order. Wait. She didn't wait. She turned and walked toward the kitchen, her heart hammering, her mind screaming at her to run. Behind her, she heard Adrian say something to his son. Heard chairs moving. She pushed through the kitchen door, past Marco, who was yelling something about orders, and straight to the back exit that she'd memorized her first day. The exit that was supposed to keep her safe was... The rain was coming down in sheets now. Clara didn't have a jacket. Didn't care. She stepped into the alley, pulling the door closed behind her, and nearly ran into Adrian Moretti. He'd moved fast. Must have gone out the front and circled around. He was soaked already, his expensive suit ruined, his hair plastered to his head. They stood 3 feet apart in the rain, staring at each other. You ran, he said. I'm going home. You ran, he repeated, which means you have something to run from. I don't know what you're talking about. My mother hasn't spoken in that dialect in 30 years. Nobody speaks it anymore. Everyone from that village is either dead or scattered. So either you're the unluckiest coincidence I've ever met, or you're connected to something my family has been trying to bury for decades. Clara's hands clenched into fists. Your family's problems aren't my problem. What's your real name? Clara Bennett. Liar! The word hung in the air between them, sharp as glass. I need to go, Clara said. I'll find out anyway. I have people who can find out anything, background checks, security clearances. I could know everything about you by morning. Terror and anger mixed in Clara's chest. Then why are you asking? Because I'm giving you the chance to tell me yourself. I don't owe you anything. No, Adrian agreed, but you helped my mother, and I don't believe in coincidences, so I'm asking you again, what's your real name? Clara stared at this man who had somehow unraveled 6 months of careful hiding in less than an hour. This billionaire who looked at her like she was a puzzle he was determined to solve. She could lie again, could run again, could disappear into the night and start over somewhere else. But she was so tired of running. If I tell you, she said quietly, you'll wish I hadn't. Try me. The rain poured down, thunder rumbled, and Clara made a decision that would change everything. My name is Clara Vescari, she said. And if your family is from Corleone, then you already know why I'm hiding. Adrian's face went perfectly still. Then something like recognition flickered in his eyes. Recognition and something worse. Horror. Vescari, he repeated. Marco Vescari's daughter. Clara wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly freezing. Yeah, that Vescari. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Adrian laughed. It was a terrible sound, sharp and broken. Of course you are. I'm not my father. Your father destroyed my family. Adrian's voice had gone deadly quiet. Your father is the reason my father is dead. The reason my mother has nightmares. The reason I spent 20 years building an empire just to have enough power that people like your family could never touch us again. I'm not my family, Clara said, hating how small her voice sounded. I ran away from them. I've been hiding for 5 years. From what? From him, from Marco, from everyone who wants to use me like a bargaining chip. And you thought hiding in Brooklyn would work? Adrian shook his head. They'll find you eventually. They always do. I know. So what's your plan? Keep running? Change your name every few months? Hope they get bored? I don't have a plan, Clara's voice cracked. I'm just trying to survive, okay? That's all I've been doing for 5 years, surviving. Adrian stared at her. Rain dripped from his hair down his face. He looked like a man trying to solve an impossible equation. Go home, he said finally. Get your things. Be ready to leave tomorrow. What? You're coming to work for me. Clara almost laughed. Are you insane? My mother just had her worst episode in months. You're the only person I've ever seen calm her down that fast. My son is going through therapy because he watched his mother die, and he won't connect with anyone. And you... Adrian gestured at her, frustration in every line of his body. You're a ghost from a nightmare my family can't escape, which means you know things I need to know. I don't know anything. You know enough to run. You know enough to hide. You know enough that Marco Vescari has spent 5 years looking for you. Adrian took a step closer. I'm offering you protection, a job, a place to stay where people like your father can't reach you. In exchange for what? Information, the truth about what happened between our families, and help with my mother and son. You hate me, Clara said. You just said, I hate your father. I hate what your family did to mine. But you... He paused, something complicated crossing his face. You ran, which means maybe you're not like them, or maybe you are, and this is all an elaborate trap. Either way, I'm going to find out. And if I say no, then I'll do the background check anyway. I'll find out everything about you, Clara Viscari. And then I'll decide whether to help you or hand you over to Marco myself. The threat landed like a punch. You wouldn't. Try me. They stood in the rain, locked in a battle of wills that neither could win. Clara knew she should run, should disappear into the night and never look back. But Adrian Moretti was right about one thing. They always found her eventually. Marco's men, the family's soldiers, the people who saw her as property, not a person. She'd been running for 5 years, and she was so tired. I need to think about it, she said. You have until morning. Adrian pulled a business card from his wallet. It was soaked, the ink running, but she could still read it. Call me by 9, or don't, and I'll make the call for you. He turned and walked back toward the restaurant, leaving Clara alone in the rain with a ruined business card, and a choice that felt like a trap, no matter which option she picked. She stood there for a long time, letting the rain wash over her, trying to figure out when her life had spun so completely out of control. The answer came easily. The moment she'd opened her mouth and spoken in her grandmother's dialect. The moment she'd reminded Adrian Moretti that some debts were written in blood. Clara didn't go home right away. She walked through the rain for hours, her clothes soaked through, her mind spinning in circles. Brooklyn at night was a different city, quieter, darker, full of shadows that could be anything. She ended up at a 24-hour diner in Park Slope, shivering in a corner booth while a sympathetic waitress brought her coffee she couldn't afford and didn't ask questions. The business card sat on the table, mocking her. Adrian Moretti, CEO, Moretti Development Group, a phone number, an address in Manhattan that probably had a doorman and marble floors and the kind of security that kept people like her out. Or in. Clara wrapped her hands around the coffee mug, trying to stop shaking. It wasn't just the cold. It was the adrenaline crash, the terror, the exhaustion of 5 years of running finally catching up to her. She'd been so careful. Changed her name 3 times, moved every few months, worked jobs that paid cash, lived in apartments that didn't ask for references, kept her head down, her mouth shut, her past buried. And one conversation with a dying woman had destroyed it all. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Clara's heart stopped. We know where you are. 3 words. That was all it took to turn her blood to ice. She looked around the diner, couple in the corner, truck driver at the counter, waitress refilling coffee. Nobody looked dangerous. Everyone looked dangerous. Another text. Tomorrow, midnight. Corner of Union and 4th. Don't run. Clara's hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. They'd found her. Marco's men, the family, the people she'd spent 5 years hiding from. She had less than 24 hours. The business card sat on the table, Adrian Moretti's offer suddenly looking less like a trap and more like a lifeboat. Protection. A place to stay where people like your father can't reach you. Could he really protect her? Could anyone protect her from Marco Viscari? Clara pulled out her own phone, a burner she'd bought at a corner store. No contract, no trace. She'd thrown away 4 of them in the last 2 years. She typed in the number from the business card. Her thumb hovered over the call button. This was insane. Adrian Moretti hated her family, hated everything she represented. The only reason he'd offered her anything was because he wanted information, wanted leverage, wanted to use her the same way Marco did. But at least Adrian's prison would have guards, walls, protection. Marco's would have none of those things. Clara hit call. It rang 3 times. She almost hung up. Then, Moretti. His voice was rough with sleep. Clara glanced at the clock. 2:47 a.m. She'd woken him up. It's Clara Viscari, she said quietly. I'm accepting your offer. Silence. Then, what happened? They found me. I have until tomorrow midnight to... Her voice cracked. I need help. More silence. Clara could hear him breathing, thinking, calculating. Where are you? Park Slope, diner on 7th Avenue. Stay there. I'm sending someone. I can't afford. You're my employee now. That means you're my responsibility. Adrian's voice had gone hard, businesslike. Stay visible. Stay in public. Don't go anywhere alone. My driver will be there in 20 minutes. How will I know? Black Mercedes. He'll say his name is James. Don't get in any other car. Okay. Clara? Adrian's voice softened slightly. Whatever you did to piss off Marco Viscari, it must have been spectacular. I said no. Clara's voice was steady now. I told him I wouldn't marry Vincent Castellano. I wouldn't be his bargaining chip. I wouldn't play the game, so I ran. And he's been hunting you ever since. Yeah. Good, Adrian said, and there was satisfaction in his voice. That means you're more valuable than I thought. Stay put. Don't talk to anyone. James will bring you to me. He hung up. Clara sat in the diner, clutching her cold coffee, watching the door. 23 minutes later, a black Mercedes pulled up outside. A man in a dark suit stepped out, scanned the street, then entered the diner. Clara Bennett? He asked quietly. James? He nodded. Mr. Moretti sent me. We need to go. Clara left money on the table, most of the tip Adrian had given her, and followed James into the rain. The Mercedes was warm, dry, and smelled like expensive leather. Clara sank into the back seat, her wet clothes soaking the upholstery. I'm sorry, I'm getting everything wet. Don't worry about it, miss. James pulled into traffic smoothly. Mr. Moretti's orders are to bring you directly to the residence. We'll take the tunnel to avoid traffic. The residence. As if billionaires didn't have homes like normal people. Clara watched Brooklyn disappear through the rain-streaked window. Somewhere behind her, Marco's men were waiting at a corner in Union Square, ready to drag her back into a life she'd almost escaped. Somewhere ahead of her, Adrian Moretti was waiting with questions and expectations and a hatred of her family that ran deep as bone. She was trapped between two monsters, trying to figure out which one would devour her first. The Mercedes slipped into the tunnel, and Clara closed her eyes, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life, or if maybe, just maybe, she'd finally found someone dangerous enough to fight back. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building in Tribeca that probably cost more than most people made in a lifetime. Clara stepped out of the elevator into a foyer that felt like walking into a museum. Marble floors, artwork that looked important, floor-to-ceiling windows showing Manhattan spread out below like a kingdom. James had left her at the entrance with a polite nod and instructions to wait. So Clara stood there in her soaked waitress uniform, dripping on marble that probably cost more per square foot than her monthly rent, feeling like an intruder. You look like a drowned cat. Clara turned. Adrian stood in the doorway wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair messy from sleep. Somehow he looked more dangerous like this, less polished, more real. Sorry about your floor. It's marble. It'll survive. He studied her for a moment. You're shaking. I'm cold. You're terrified. He said it like a fact, not an accusation. Come on, we'll get you dry, then we'll talk. Clara followed him through rooms that felt too big, too empty. Everything was expensive and cold, designer furniture that looked uncomfortable, art that made statements instead of sense. It felt like a showroom, not a home. Guest room's this way. Adrian pushed open a door. Bathroom's through there. Should be towels, spare clothes in the closet. My assistant keeps everything stocked. The guest room was bigger than Clara's entire apartment. King-size bed, more windows, neutral colors that screamed interior decorator. Thank you, Clara said quietly. Adrian nodded and started to leave, then paused. The texts. What exactly did they say? Clara pulled out her phone with shaking hands and showed him. His jaw tightened as he read. They're not bluffing. Marco doesn't bluff. I know. Which means they've been watching you, probably for days, waiting for the right moment. Adrian handed back the phone. Tomorrow midnight, they would have taken you. Probably wouldn't have killed you. You're too valuable as leverage. But they would have made sure you understood what happens to people who run from the family. Clara wrapped her arms around herself. How do you know so much about how they operate? Because they destroyed my family the same way. Adrian's voice went flat. My father thought he could stand up to them too, thought he could say no. 6 months later, he was dead in an alley with 2 bullets in his chest, and my mother was so traumatized she couldn't speak for a year. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just understand what you're dealing with. He met her eyes. Marco Vescari doesn't forgive. He doesn't forget. And he doesn't let go of things that belong to him. I don't belong to anyone. Try telling him that. Clara looked away. You said you could protect me. I can. This building has security that would make the Secret Service jealous. Cameras everywhere. Guards on every floor. Nobody gets in without clearance. Adrian's expression hardened. But protection comes with conditions. Information. Information, he confirmed. Everything you know about the Vescari family. Their operations, their connections, their weaknesses. Especially anything about what happened 20 years ago. I was 10 when I left, Clara said. I don't know anything about business deals or... You know enough to run. You know enough that Marco spent 5 years hunting you. Adrian stepped closer. So stop pretending you're just some innocent bystander. You're a Vescari. That means you've seen things, heard things, know things that most people don't. Clara felt anger flare in her chest. You're right. I've seen things. I've seen my father beat men until they begged for death. I've seen my uncle kill someone in our kitchen while I hid in the pantry. I've seen women treated like furniture and children raised to be soldiers. That's what I know about the Vescari family. Is that helpful enough for you? Adrian's expression didn't change. It's a start. I hate you, Clara said quietly. Good. That makes 2 of us. He turned toward the door. Get dry. Get some sleep. We'll talk in the morning. What time is it? Almost 4. Your son, Luca, sleeps in the East Wing with his nanny. You won't see him unless I say so. Adrian paused in the doorway. And Clara? Don't try to leave. The elevator won't work without a code, and the stairs are alarmed. You're safe here, but you're also trapped. He left before she could respond. Clara stood in the expensive guest room, listening to the silence of a penthouse that cost more than she'd make in 10 lifetimes, and wondered if she'd just traded one prison for another. She peeled off her wet clothes, took a shower that could have fit 4 people, and found pajamas in the closet that still had tags on them. Size small. Like Adrian's assistant had known exactly what size she'd need. That thought should have been comforting. Instead, it was terrifying. Clara climbed into the massive bed and stared at the ceiling, knowing sleep wouldn't come. Her mind was racing, cataloging dangers, calculating exits, trying to figure out how everything had gone so wrong so fast. 24 hours ago, she'd been invisible, safe, boring. Now she was trapped in a billionaire's penthouse, hiding from the family that wanted to drag her back into hell, working for a man who hated everything she represented. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Clara's heart stopped. But the message wasn't from Marco's men. Sleep well, Clara Vescari. You're going to need your strength. No signature, no explanation. Clara deleted the message, turned off the phone, and pulled the covers over her head like a child hiding from monsters. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was hiding in the home of a man whose father her family had killed, protected by the son of a dead man, running from the people who shared her blood. And somehow, impossibly, she felt safer here than she had in 5 years. That terrified her more than anything. Clara woke to sunlight streaming through windows she'd forgotten to cover, and the smell of coffee that reminded her she hadn't eaten since yesterday. Her phone said 11:47 a.m. She'd slept for almost 7 hours, a record. Someone had left clothes outside her door, jeans that fit perfectly, a soft sweater, undergarments still in packaging, socks. Everything she needed, nothing she'd asked for. It felt like being dressed by a stranger. Clara hated it, but she put the clothes on anyway because her waitress uniform was still soaked and smelled like rain and desperation. She found her way back through the maze of rooms, following the coffee smell and the sound of voices. The kitchen was massive and modern, all stainless steel and marble counters. Adrian sat at an island reading something on his tablet, a cup of coffee in his hand. Across from him sat a boy, Luca, had to be, pushing scrambled eggs around his plate without eating. A woman in her 60s was cooking at the stove, humming softly. Not a chef. Too comfortable, too familiar. The nanny, maybe, or a housekeeper who'd been here long enough to feel like family. They all looked up when Clara entered. Luca's eyes went wide. That's the lady from the restaurant. Good morning, Clara. Adrian's voice was neutral, professional, like last night hadn't happened. Coffee? Please. The older woman brought her a mug without being asked, her eyes kind. Cream? Sugar? Black is fine, thank you. I'm Elena, the woman said. I manage the household. Anything you need, you let me know. Clara nodded, unsure what to say. She'd never had someone manage anything for her before. Luca was still staring. You talked to Nona in that weird language. Luca. Adrian's voice held a warning. But she did. Nobody ever talks to Nona like that. Not even Dr. Martinez. Clara sat down carefully, aware of being watched. Your grandmother speaks a very old dialect. My grandmother taught it to me when I was young. Why? Because she thought it was important to remember where we came from. Luca considered this. Nona forgets a lot of things now. But last night she remembered you. She said you had kind eyes. Something tight in Clara's chest loosened slightly. That's nice of her to say? She also said you were dangerous. Luca said it matter-of-factly, like commenting on the weather. Papa said that's ridiculous. Clara glanced at Adrian, who was very carefully not looking at her. People are complicated, Clara said finally. Sometimes we're both things at once. Luca seemed to accept this. He went back to pushing his eggs around. Eat, Adrian said. You've got swimming lessons in an hour. I hate swimming. You're still going. Can Clara come? No. Why not? Because she has work to do. Adrian finally looked at Clara. My mother's having a good morning. I'd like you to meet with her. Properly, this time. Clara's stomach nodded. Now? After you eat. He gestured at Elena, who placed a plate of food in front of Clara without being asked. She's in the sunroom, east wing, third floor. Elena will show you. It wasn't a request. Clara picked at her breakfast while Luca asked her questions about Brooklyn and restaurants and whether she'd ever met anyone famous. Adrian read his tablet, made phone calls in rapid Italian, ignored both of them. He was different in daylight, sharper, more controlled. The man who'd stood in the rain last night had been running on exhaustion and adrenaline. This version was the billionaire CEO who built empires and crushed enemies. Clara wasn't sure which one was more dangerous. After Luca left with his nanny for swimming lessons, Adrian stood. Ready? Not really. Good. Honesty's refreshing. He started walking. Clara followed. The penthouse was even bigger than she'd thought. 3 floors connected by a private staircase, each level decorated with the same cold perfection. Adrian led her to the east wing, where the light was softer and the furniture looked actually used. Mrs. Moretti sat in a sunroom surrounded by windows, a blanket over her lap, staring at the city below. She looked smaller in daylight, frailer. A woman who'd survived something terrible and was still fighting the aftermath. Mama. Adrian's voice went soft. I brought someone to meet you. Mrs. Moretti turned slowly. Her eyes found Clara, and something like recognition flickered there. Tu, she whispered. You. Si, signora. Clara approached carefully. Mi chiamo Clara. Adrian's mother studied her for a long moment, then reached out with trembling hands. Clara took them gently. Mi ricordo tua nonna, Mrs. Moretti said quietly. I remember your grandmother. Clara's blood went cold. You knew her. Ida cantava come un anciullo. Cantava e tutti I picciridri addormiano. She sang like an angel. She sang, and all the children would fall asleep. How? Clara looked at Adrian, who was watching with sharp intensity. How did you know my grandmother? Mrs. Moretti's eyes filled with tears. Prima ca ufoku. Prima ca tutto cancio. Before the fire. Before everything changed. What fire? Clara asked. Signora, what fire? But Mrs. Moretti had gone somewhere else, her eyes distant. Ufoku kamazzo tutti. Ufoku kauto patri apiciao. The fire that killed everyone. The fire your father started. Clara stumbled backward. No, that's not... My father didn't... Veru. True. Mrs. Moretti's voice was firm despite the tears. Veru et tu usai. Adrian caught Clara's arm, steadying her. What's she saying? She's saying my father started a fire, that he killed people. Clara's voice was shaking. But that's insane. My father is a lot of things, but he's not... Not what? A murderer? Adrian's grip tightened. Ask her about the night of August 15th, 1999. Clara looked at him. How do you know that date? Because that's the night everything changed. The night your family and mine went to war. Adrian's eyes were hard. The night my father witnessed something he wasn't supposed to see. The night someone set fire to a warehouse in Red Hook and 23 people burned alive inside. The room tilted. Clara felt like she was falling. 23 people, Adrian continued. Men, women, 3 children, locked in a warehouse and burned to death because they knew too much about the Viscari family's operations. My father was supposed to die too. He was meeting someone there that night. But he got lucky. He got out. And then what? Clara whispered. And then your family spent 6 months hunting him, threatening my mother, terrorizing my infant son, until finally they cornered him in an alley and put 2 bullets in his chest. Mrs. Moretti was crying now, rocking back and forth, murmuring in that ancient dialect. Clara pulled away from Adrian. I didn't know. I was 10 years old. I didn't... But you know now, Adrian said. And you're going to tell me everything, starting with why Marco Viscari has spent 5 years hunting his own daughter. Because of the ledger. The words came out before Clara could stop them. Adrian went very still. What ledger? Clara sank into a chair, her legs giving out. My grandmother gave it to me the night before she died. Said it was insurance. Said if anything ever happened, I should use it to protect myself. What's in it? Everything. Clara's voice was barely a whisper. Names, dates, transactions, proof of bribes, murders, deals with politicians, 20 years of evidence that the Viscari family built their empire on blood and fire. And you've had this for 5 years. I've been running for 5 years because of it. Clara looked up at Adrian. Marco knows I have it. He knows that if it ever surfaces, it'll destroy everything he's built. So he hunts me. And when he finds me, he'll either force me to hand it over or he'll kill me and tear apart everything I own until he finds it himself. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then, where is it? Safe. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. Clara met his eyes. That ledger is the only reason I'm still alive. The moment anyone else knows where it is, I lose my leverage. Or you gain protection. From you? Clara laughed bitterly. You hate my family. The second you have that ledger, what's stopping you from using it to destroy them and me along with them? Because if I wanted you destroyed, I would have handed you to Marco last night. Adrian crouched in front of her chair, forcing eye contact. I need that ledger, Clara. If it has proof that your father killed my father, that's evidence. That's justice. Justice won't bring him back. No, but it'll make sure Marco Viscari spends the rest of his life in prison. Adrian's voice was cold, controlled. And that matters. Mrs. Moretti said something in dialect, sharp and urgent. Adrian responded in Italian, his tone gentler. She answered back, grabbing his arm. What's she saying? Clara asked. She says you're telling the truth. She says she can see it in your eyes. You're not like them. Adrian stood. She also says the ledger has more than just evidence against your family. She says it has proof of something else. Something about my father. Clara's chest tightened. I don't know what she means. You're lying. I'm not... You've had 5 years to study that ledger. You know exactly what's in it. Adrian's voice went hard. So tell me, what proof is there about my father? Clara looked at Mrs. Moretti, who was watching her with ancient, knowing eyes. Your father wasn't supposed to be at the warehouse that night, Clara said slowly. He was supposed to be there because he'd been feeding information to the FBI for 6 months. Adrian's face went white. You're lying. There are bank statements, wire transfers, meeting notes. Clara hated the words coming out of her mouth. Your father was an informant. He was helping build a RICO case against the Viscari family. That's why Marco had him killed. That's impossible. It's in the ledger. No. Adrian's hands clenched into fists. My father was a builder, a legitimate businessman. He was trying to protect your family, Clara said quietly. The Viscaris had threatened your mother, your son. So he made a deal with the FBI. He'd give them everything they needed to take down the organization, and they'd put your family in witness protection. Adrian stared at her like she'd stabbed him. But the warehouse fire happened first, Clara continued, and someone in the FBI leaked. Marco found out about the informant, so he hunted your father down and killed him before he could testify. Mrs. Moretti was crying harder now, speaking rapidly in dialect. Clara caught fragments: truth, lies, betrayal, blood. My father was a hero, Adrian said, but his voice cracked on the word. He was trying to stop them. He was trying to save you. Clara stood, wishing she could take back every word. And he died for it. I'm sorry. Adrian turned away, his shoulders rigid. Get out. Adrian, get out. The words were a roar that made Clara flinch. Go back to your room. Don't come out. Don't talk to Luca. Don't talk to my mother. Don't. His voice broke. Just get out. Clara fled. She made it back to the guest room before her legs gave out. She collapsed on the bed, shaking, hating herself for destroying whatever fragile piece Adrian had built around his father's memory. But it was the truth, and the truth was all she had left. Hours passed. Clara heard footsteps in the hallway, voices raised and then muffled. Elena knocked once to bring food Clara couldn't eat. The sun moved across the sky, and Manhattan transformed from day to night outside her windows. At 9 p.m., her door opened. Adrian stood in the doorway, holding 2 glasses of scotch. He looked exhausted, devastated, older than his 32 years. I made some calls, he said quietly, reached out to some contacts at the bureau, off the record. Clara sat up. And? They wouldn't confirm anything officially, but there was a case. Codename Operation Bloodline. Target? Viscari crime family. Active informant who died before he could testify. Adrian's hands tightened on the glasses. His codename was Builder. I'm sorry, Clara whispered. Don't be. Adrian crossed the room, handed her one of the glasses. You told me the truth. That's more than most people have done in 20 years. They sat in silence, drinking scotch that burned and tasted like regret. The ledger, Adrian said finally. If it has proof of the FBI investigation, proof of the warehouse fire, proof of my father's murder, that's enough to bring down Marco and everyone connected to him. Which is why he'll never stop hunting me. Which is why you need to stay here. Adrian looked at her. You need protection. I need information. We're stuck with each other. Lucky us. Something that might have been a smile flickered across his face. Yeah, lucky us. What about your son, your mother? They didn't sign up for this. Luca's already attached to you. He asked Elena if you were staying. Adrian set down his glass. And my mother hasn't been this calm in years. Whatever you did, whatever you said, it helped. I just spoke to her in a language she understood. You gave her peace. Adrian's voice was quiet. That's not nothing. Clara finished her scotch, feeling it burn all the way down. Your mother said she remembered my grandmother. How is that possible? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Adrian stood. Tomorrow, I want you to talk to her again. Really talk. Find out what she remembers about the fire, the families, everything before it all went to hell. She might not remember, or she might not want to. Then we'll deal with that when it happens. Adrian moved toward the door, then paused. The ledger. If I promise not to use it against you, if I give you my word that I'm only interested in bringing down Marco and the people who killed my father, would you consider sharing it? Clara looked at this man who had every reason to hate her and somehow didn't. Not completely. Not yet. Maybe, she said, if you can prove I can trust you. Fair enough. Adrian nodded. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be difficult. He left, closing the door softly behind him. Clara sat in the expensive guest room, surrounded by luxury she didn't deserve, protected by a man whose father her family had killed, and wondered how her life had become a Greek tragedy, written by someone with a cruel sense of humor. Her phone, the burner she thought she'd turned off, buzzed on the nightstand. Clara's blood went cold. The message was simple. We're patient. We can wait. But not forever. No signature, no name, just a reminder that somewhere out there, Marco Viscari was still hunting. And eventually, all the security in the world wouldn't be enough to keep her safe. Clara didn't show Adrian the text. She deleted it, turned off the phone, and shoved it under the mattress like that would somehow make the threat disappear. It didn't. The words burned in her mind all night, keeping her awake until dawn painted the Manhattan skyline gold and gray. She found Luca in the kitchen at 7 a.m., eating cereal and watching cartoons on a tablet. "You're up early?" Clara said. Luca shrugged without looking away from the screen. "Couldn't sleep. Papa was on the phone all night, yelling in Italian." "About what?" "Dunno. He always yells in Italian when he doesn't want me to understand." Luca finally glanced up. "You speak Italian, right?" "Some." "Can you teach me?" "Papa won't. He says I need to focus on English and Mandarin for business." Luca made a face. "But Nonna only talks Italian and that other language. I want to understand her." Something in Clara's chest cracked. This kid, 7 years old and already worried about business languages, already feeling the weight of empire, just wanted to talk to his grandmother. "I can teach you a little," Clara said, "if your father says it's okay." "He won't care. He barely notices anything I do unless it's school or swimming or piano." Luca went back to his cereal. "Elena says you're staying here now, like living here." "For a while." "Why?" Clara sat down across from him, choosing her words carefully. "Your father offered me a job helping take care of your grandmother." "We already have nurses for that." "I speak her language. That makes it easier for her." Luca considered this. "Okay, but you should know, people don't usually stay. Papa hires people and they leave after a few weeks because he's difficult." "Difficult how?" "He works all the time. Gets mad when people make mistakes. Doesn't like anyone touching his stuff or changing things." Luca counted on his fingers. "We've had 6 housekeepers this year, 4 nannies since Mama died. Elena's only still here because she's been with the family forever, and she doesn't take his crap." Clara tried not to smile. "You're not supposed to say crap. Elena says it all the time. Elena's a grown-up." "So? You're a grown-up and you were a waitress. That's not a fancy job." The honesty was brutal. Clara decided she liked this kid. "You're right. It's not." "So why did Papa hire you? He only hires people with fancy degrees from fancy schools." "Maybe he made an exception." "Papa doesn't make exceptions." Luca studied her with dark eyes too smart for his age. "You must be special somehow." Before Clara could answer, Adrian walked in wearing a suit that probably cost what she used to make in 3 months. He looked like he'd slept even less than she had. "Luca, go get ready for school." "It's Saturday." "You have tutoring. Go." Luca rolled his eyes, but obeyed, leaving Clara alone with Adrian in a kitchen that suddenly felt too small. "You look terrible," Clara said. "Thanks. You too." Adrian poured coffee with the mechanical precision of someone running on fumes. "I spent the night making calls, talked to some people who know people, got some information about Marco's operation. And? He's escalating. 3 weeks ago, he put out word that he's offering a reward for information leading to your location. $250,000. Clara's stomach dropped. "That's a lot of money for a missing daughter, yeah." Adrian leaned against the counter. "Which confirms what you said. The ledger's worth more to him than you are. He needs it back before it destroys everything he's built." "Did you find out how he tracked me to Brooklyn?" "Security footage from a bodega 2 blocks from your apartment. Someone recognized you, made a call. By the time Marco's people showed up, you were already here." Adrian's jaw tightened. "They're watching this building now. 3 men in rotation, different vehicles, professional surveillance. They can't get in, right? You said they can't get in. But they know you're here now." Adrian set down his coffee. "Which means we need to move faster than I planned." "Move faster on what?" "Getting the ledger, building a case, bringing down Marco before he brings down us." Adrian's eyes were hard, determined. "I've got a contact at the FBI. Someone my father trusted. I need you to meet with him, explain what you have, see if we can build something that'll stick." Clara's instinct was to refuse. She'd spent 5 years trusting no one, hiding from everyone. The idea of walking into a federal building and laying out her entire life felt like suicide. But the text last night had made something clear. Hiding wasn't working anymore. Marco was closing in. Eventually he'd find a way through Adrian's security, or he'd wait until she made a mistake, or he'd hurt someone she cared about to draw her out. She needed to stop running and start fighting back. When? She asked. Monday. I'm setting up the meeting now. Adrian studied her. You're sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. Good. Because we're going to need leverage. All of it. Elena appeared in the doorway. Mr. Moretti, your mother is asking for Clara. Adrian nodded. Go. I'll handle the FBI contact. Clara found Mrs. Moretti in the sunroom again, wrapped in blankets despite the warm morning. The elderly woman's eyes were clearer today, more present. Buongiorno, signora, Clara said softly. Buongiorno, Clara. Mrs. Moretti gestured to the chair beside her. Accettati, avemo assai cose di dire. Sit. We have much to discuss. Clara sat, unsure where this was going. Mrs. Moretti reached over and took Clara's hand with surprising strength. Tu hai l'occhi di tua nonna, occhi verdi come un mare. You have your grandmother's eyes, green as the sea. You really knew her? Eramo amici quando eramo picciridi, prima che I nostri famigli nicero nemici. We were friends when we were children, before our families became enemies. Clara's breath caught. What happened? Potiri, avidità, I cosi soliti che distruino l'omini. Power, greed, the usual things that destroy men. Mrs. Moretti's eyes grew distant. I nostri patri erano amici, travagliavano insieme, costruiano insieme, poi tornano vogliu ciu, sempre più, e quando me patri dissi no, tornano uffici ammazzari. The words tumbled out in dialect, but Clara understood. Our fathers were friends. They worked together, built together. Then your grandfather wanted more. Always more. And when my father said no, your grandfather had him killed. I didn't know, Clara whispered. Lu saciu, tu non si como idi. I know, you're not like them. Mrs. Moretti's grip tightened. Ma u libru cateni idu po salvari tutti o ammazzare tutti, dipendi di culusa. But the ledger you have, it can save everyone or kill everyone. It depends who uses it. How do you know about the ledger? Mrs. Moretti smiled sadly. Tua nonna mi scrissi prima di morire, mi dissi che ti l'avia dato, che era a tua protezione e a tua maledizione. Your grandmother wrote to me before she died. She told me she'd given it to you, that it was your protection and your curse. Clara's hand started shaking. My grandmother wrote to you? When? 6 anni fa. Disse che stava morendo, che volia che qualcuno sapia la verità se tu non potia dire. 6 years ago. She said she was dying, that she wanted someone to know the truth if you couldn't tell it. What truth? Mrs. Moretti's eyes filled with tears. Che u focu non fu u to patri, fu u me maritu. The room tilted. Clara heard the words, but they didn't make sense. That the fire wasn't your father. It was my husband. No, Clara said, that's wrong. Your husband was the one trying to stop them. He was the informant. Idu era tutti I due così. He was both. Mrs. Moretti was crying now, her voice breaking. Idu travagliava cu l'FBI. È vero, ma puru travagliava cu uto patri. Da due furiari u locu uni, l'informazioni si ricogliano. Quando uto patri dissi che volia nesciri, che volia pace, ume marito panicò. Pensò che uto patri u tradia. A così appicciau u focu. He was working with the FBI, yes, but he was also working with your father. They both ran the place where the information was gathered. When your father said he wanted out, that he wanted peace, my husband panicked. He thought your father was betraying him, so he started the fire. Clara stood up so fast the chair fell over. You're lying. Furia. I wish. Mrs. Moretti was sobbing. Ma è a verità. Ume marito ammazzò 23 persone. Ammazzò uto patri. E poi uto nonno ammazzò ume marito pi vinita. Tutti pi putiri e paura. But it's the truth.
My husband killed 23 people, killed your father, and then your grandfather killed my husband for revenge, all for power and fear.
The words crashed over Clara like waves. Everything she'd believed, everything Adrian believed, was wrong. Their fathers hadn't been enemies. They'd been partners. And the fire that started the war wasn't about stopping criminals. It was about two terrified men trying to save themselves and destroying everyone around them instead. Does Adrian know? Clara's voice was barely a whisper. No, e non può sapere, o distruggeria. No, and he can't know. It would destroy him. I can't lie to him. Allora dici a verità, ma sappi che quando o fai, idu ti voglio dire ancora più. Then tell him the truth, but know that when you do, he'll hate you even more. Clara backed toward the door, her mind spinning. I need to go. Clara. But she was already running down the hallway, past Elena who called her name, into her room, where she locked the door and tried to breathe through the panic clawing at her chest. Adrian's father had started the fire, had killed 23 people, had worked with the Viscaris until he decided he wanted out, and when he tried to leave, he'd murdered everyone who could expose him. And then Marco Viscari, Clara's grandfather, not her father, had hunted him down and executed him. The entire story was a lie. The entire war was built on false heroes and false villains. Clara grabbed her phone, the one she'd hidden, and pulled up the number she'd sworn she'd never call. It rang 4 times. Then, I was wondering when you'd break. Marco Viscari's voice was smooth, cultured, terrifying in its calmness. How did you know I'd call this number? Clara asked. Because I know you, Nipoti. You're smart, resourceful, but eventually you always need the truth more than you need safety. Marco sounded almost proud. So, have you figured it out yet? Figured out what? Why I've been hunting you for 5 years. Why I need the ledger so badly. He paused. It's not to protect the family business, Clara. It's to protect you. You're insane. The ledger has proof that your father, my son, tried to broker peace with the Morettis. Tried to get out of the life, take his family legitimate. And for that attempt at decency, Adrian Moretti's father murdered him along with 22 innocent people. Marco's voice went hard. That ledger is the only proof that my son wasn't the monster everyone thinks he was, that he tried to do the right thing and was killed for it. Clara's legs gave out. She slid down the wall, phone pressed to her ear. The FBI has the story wrong, Marco continued. They think my son started the fire, but it was Moretti Sr., and when I found out, I made sure he paid for it. But then you disappeared with the only evidence that would clear your father's name. So yes, Clara, I've been hunting you, not to hurt you, to save what's left of his reputation. You threatened me, tried to force me into marriage, to protect you. Vincent Castellano's family has the power to keep you safe. A marriage alliance would have ended this war, given you security. Marco's voice softened. I'm not your enemy, Clara. I'm your grandfather, and I'm trying to save you from making the same mistakes your father did. By trapping me, by giving you options. Marco exhaled. You're in Adrian Moretti's penthouse right now, yes? Trusting the son of the man who killed your father? How long do you think that'll last once he knows the truth? He won't. He'll destroy you, just like his father destroyed everyone who got in his way. Marco's voice turned urgent. Come home, Clara. Bring the ledger. Let me protect you the way I should have protected your father. Clara ended the call. Her hands were shaking so badly she dropped the phone. It clattered on the marble floor, screen cracking. Everything was wrong. Every story she'd been told, every truth she'd believed, all of it twisted and broken and impossible to untangle. She didn't know who to trust, didn't know what was real. The door to her room opened. Adrian stood there, his face pale. How long have you been listening? Clara asked. Long enough. His voice was flat, emotionless. My father started the fire. Adrian, my father killed 23 people, including yours. He laughed, a terrible sound. And here I've spent 20 years building an empire to avenge a murderer. You didn't know. My mother knew. Adrian's voice cracked. She's known this entire time, and she let me believe. He stopped, pressing his palms against his eyes. Everything I built, everything I became, it was all for a lie. Clara stood slowly. Your father was trying to escape too. He made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but he was trying to protect your family. By murdering people? Adrian dropped his hands. His eyes were red, devastated. Don't defend him. I'm not. I'm just saying. Clara took a breath. Both our fathers were trying to get out. Both of them made choices that destroyed lives. And both of them paid for it. And now we're paying for it too. Adrian moved to the window, staring out at the city. Marco was right about one thing. Once this gets out, once people know the truth, it'll destroy everything. The Moretti name, my business, my son's future, everything. Unless we bury it. Adrian turned. What? The ledger has the truth. But truth is only dangerous if people know about it. Claire's mind was racing, calculating. We could make a deal. With Marco, with the FBI, with whoever we need to. We give them enough to take down the current operations, but we bury the stuff about our fathers. Let the dead stay dead. That's survival, Clara said. That's what this is. We've both been surviving our father's mistakes our entire lives. Maybe it's time we stop fighting each other and start fighting for something that actually matters. Adrian stared at her for a long moment. And what matters? Luca, your mother. The people who are still alive and still have a chance. Claire stepped closer. We can't change what our fathers did, but we can choose not to destroy everyone else in the process of getting revenge. Marco will never agree to that. He might. If we offer him what he wants, proof that his son wasn't a monster, if we give him back his son's reputation in exchange for leaving us alone. And the FBI? We give them enough to shut down the current operations. Names, dates, evidence of recent crimes, just not the old stuff. Clara's heart was pounding. It won't be perfect. It won't be complete justice, but it might be enough to stop the bleeding. Adrian was quiet for a long time. Then, you're suggesting we become exactly what we've been running from. People who bury the truth to save themselves. I'm suggesting we choose who we want to protect. Clara's voice was steady now. And I choose your son, your mother. The people who deserve a future more than our fathers deserved redemption. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Not quite trust, not quite forgiveness, but maybe the beginning of understanding. I need to think about this, he said finally. Okay. He started to leave, then paused. Clara? That call with Marco, was he telling the truth about the marriage alliance? Yeah. Vincent Castellano's family wanted to unite the bloodlines, create peace through marriage. Claire's voice went flat. I said no. Marco didn't take it well. Good. Good? Adrian met her eyes. You said no to the easy way out. Most people wouldn't have. That means something. He left before she could respond. Clara sat on the bed, surrounded by luxury and lies, trying to figure out how her life had become a negotiation between different versions of terrible. Her phone, the cracked one, buzzed with a final message from Marco. You have 3 days to decide. After that, I'm coming for you. And I won't be gentle. 3 days to figure out how to broker peace between families that had been at war for 20 years. 3 days to convince Adrian to trust her with his family's future. 3 days to choose between truth and survival. Clara had never been good at making the right choice, but she was getting better at making the necessary one. She picked up the phone and texted Marco back. I'll meet you, neutral ground. I choose the place and time. No weapons, no soldiers, just you and me. If you want the ledger, you'll agree to my terms. The response came instantly. Agreed. Send me the details. Clara took a shaky breath and started planning. Adrian found her 2 hours later in his office, surrounded by maps of the city and notes she'd been scribbling. What are you doing? He asked. Planning a meeting with Marco. Neutral ground, public place, somewhere he can't make a move without consequences. Clara looked up. I'm going to offer him a deal. Proof about his son in exchange for his word that he'll back off and leave us alone. He'll never honor that. Maybe not. But if we do it right, if we have witnesses, documentation, leverage, he won't have a choice. Clara tapped the map. There's a restaurant in Little Italy, family-owned, been there for 60 years. The owner is connected but neutral. If we meet there, during dinner service, with enough people around, Marco can't risk violence. And if he tries anyway, then we have proof he violated the agreement, and we burn him with everything we have. Clara met Adrian's eyes. But if he keeps his word, we get to walk away. Your family, my freedom, everyone's future intact. Adrian studied the maps, the notes, Claire's desperate planning. This is insane. Yeah. It'll probably get us both killed. Probably. And you're sure about this? Clara thought about Luca asking her to teach him Italian, about Mrs. Moretti's tears, about 5 years of running and hiding and being afraid. I'm sure I'm tired of being afraid, she said, and I'm sure that if we don't try something, Marco will keep hunting until one of us is dead. So yeah, I'm sure. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out his phone. I'll make some calls, get us protection, backup, insurance. He looked at her. But Clara, if this goes wrong, if Marco makes a move or tries to hurt anyone, I need to know you're ready to use that ledger. All of it. No matter who it destroys. Including your father's reputation? Including everything. Adrian's jaw tightened. I spent 20 years fighting for a lie. I'm not letting my son grow up doing the same thing. Clara nodded. Okay. Then we do this together. They spent the rest of the day planning. Adrian made calls to contacts in law enforcement, arranged for off-duty cops to be at the restaurant, set up surveillance. Clara went through her memories of the ledger, cataloging what could be used, what had to be hidden, what leverage they actually had. By evening, they had something that almost looked like a plan. Clara was sitting in Adrian's office, reviewing notes, when Luca appeared in the doorway. Papa says you're leaving, the boy said quietly. Just for a few hours. I'll be back. People always say that. Then they don't come back. Luca's voice was small, scared. My mama said that, the morning she died. She said she'd be back for dinner. Clara's heart broke. She knelt in front of him. Luca, I can't promise nothing bad will ever happen, but I can promise I'm going to try really hard to come back, okay? Why do you have to go at all? Because sometimes grown-ups have to do scary things to protect the people they care about. Do you care about us? Luca asked. Me and Papa and Nonna? Clara hadn't expected the question, hadn't expected the answer to be so immediate, so certain. Yeah, she said softly. I do. Okay. Luca hugged her suddenly, fiercely. Then be careful. Papa's already sad all the time. If you die too, he'll be even worse. He ran off before Clara could respond. She found Adrian in the kitchen, staring at nothing. Your son thinks I'm going to die, Clara said. He's not wrong to worry. Adrian looked at her. This is a terrible plan. Got a better one? No. He rubbed his face. But if something happens to you, if Marco tries anything, then you use the ledger. You burn everything and everyone. You protect Luca and your mother, and you don't look back. Clara stepped closer. Promise me. Clara. Promise me, Adrian. If I don't make it out of this, you'll do whatever it takes to keep your family safe. Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled her into a hug that felt like goodbye and desperation and something neither of them could name. I promise, he said against her hair, but you're coming back. Okay, say it like you mean it. I'm coming back, Clara said, and almost believed it. They stood there in the kitchen, two people bound by blood feuds and broken families, holding on to each other like it was the only thing keeping them from falling apart. Tomorrow, Clara would meet Marco Viscari in a restaurant in Little Italy and try to broker peace between empires built on murder. Tonight, she let herself pretend that maybe, just maybe, she'd found something worth fighting for besides survival. And maybe that would be enough. The restaurant was called Lucia's, tucked between a bakery and a wine shop on Mulberry Street. Clara had chosen it because the owner, an elderly woman named Rosa Benedetti, had survived 3 generations of mob wars by maintaining strict neutrality and an even stricter no-violence policy. Rosa didn't care who you were or what you'd done. In her restaurant, you ate, you paid, you left peacefully. Those were the rules. Breaking them meant you never came back. And in Little Italy, that was a death sentence worse than bullets. Clara arrived at 7 p.m. wearing clothes Adrian had insisted she buy. A simple black dress that looked expensive but felt like armor, shoes she could actually run in if things went wrong. She'd argued about the cost. He'd put the card down and walked away, ending the discussion. James dropped her off 2 blocks away. Adrian had wanted to come. Clara had refused. This is between me and Marco, she'd said that morning. If you're there, It becomes about revenge, about our fathers. I need it to be about ending this. And if he tries to take you, then you'll know exactly where I am, and you'll burn everything to the ground. Clara had touched his face, a gesture that surprised them both. Trust me. Now standing outside Lucia's watching families eat pasta and tourists take photos, Clara wondered if trust was just another word for stupidity. Her phone buzzed. Adrian. 6 plainclothes officers inside, 3 more outside. You're covered. She texted back. Thank you. His response came immediately. Come back alive or I'm hunting down Marco myself. Clara almost smiled. Almost. She walked into Lucia's at exactly 7:15. The restaurant was warm, crowded, smelling like garlic and basil and red wine. Rosa stood at the host stand, tiny and fierce, wearing the same black dress she'd probably worn for 40 years. Clara Vescari, Rosa said. Not a question. Yes, ma'am. Your grandfather is already here, back corner table. He came alone like you asked. Rosa's eyes were sharp, knowing. Whatever business you have, you keep it quiet. You raise your voice, you're both out. You understand? Yes, ma'am. Good. Go. Marco Viscari sat at a corner table with his back to the wall, a position that gave him a view of the entire restaurant. He looked older than Clara remembered, grayer, thinner, but still radiating the kind of power that made everyone around him unconsciously lean away. He stood when Clara approached, old-fashioned manners wrapped around violence. Clara, you look well. You look like you've been hunting me for 5 years. She sat down without waiting for an invitation. Marco smiled. Direct. I appreciate that. He sat, gestured to the wine already on the table. 1997 Barolo, your grandmother's favorite. I'm not drinking with you. Suit yourself. He poured himself a glass, studied the color against the candlelight. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I wasn't sure you would. You gave me 3 days. Didn't leave me much choice. There's always a choice, Nepode. You've made that clear for 5 years. Marco sipped his wine. Running, hiding, changing your name. Very resourceful. I was actually proud. Proud that I escaped you? Proud that you survived. Marco set down his glass. Do you know how many people have tried to leave the family? Dozens. Most of them are dead within 6 months. But you managed to disappear completely. That takes intelligence, discipline, skills I could have used. I'm not interested in being useful to you. No, you're interested in being free. Marco leaned back. Which is why we're here. So, let's negotiate. A waiter appeared, young, nervous, clearly aware he was serving dangerous people. Marco ordered for both of them without asking what Clara wanted. She didn't argue. This wasn't about food. I want the ledger, Marco said once the waiter left. You want safety. Those interests don't have to be opposed. They are opposed. The ledger is the only thing keeping me alive. The ledger is keeping you hunted. Marco's voice was patient, like explaining something to a child. As long as you have it, you're a threat. Give it to me, and you stop being valuable to my enemies. You become invisible again. Or I become disposable. I'm your grandfather, Clara. I'm not going to hurt you. You tried to marry me off to Vincent Castellano like I was property. I tried to protect you. Marco's voice rose slightly. Rosa glanced over from the host stand, warning clear in her eyes. He lowered his voice. Vincent's family has the resources to keep you safe. A marriage alliance would have ended the feuds, given you security, given your children a future. I don't want children born into this life. This life is who you are. This life is who you made me. Clara leaned forward. My father tried to get out. Tried to go legitimate, and your people killed him for it. Marco's face went very still. Is that what you think happened? That's what the ledger proves. The ledger proves my son tried to broker peace with the Morettis. It proves he wanted out. It does not prove that my people killed him. Marco's hands clenched on the table. Antonio Moretti killed your father. Moretti Sr. started that fire because he panicked, because he thought your father was betraying him to the FBI. And then you killed Moretti for revenge. I killed a murderer who destroyed 23 lives, including my son's. Marco's voice was ice. That's not revenge. That's justice. Justice would have been letting the FBI handle it. The FBI wanted to bury it. Too many politicians involved. Too many complications. Marco finished his wine in one swallow. I made sure Antonio Moretti paid for what he did, and I've spent 20 years trying to protect what's left of my family, including you. By hunting me. By trying to bring you home safely before someone else found you first. Marco gestured around the restaurant. Do you know how many people want that ledger? How many organizations would kill you the second they got their hands on it? The Russians, the Albanians, half a dozen federal agencies. You're not safe out there, Clara. You never have been. The waiter brought appetizers. Calamari, bruschetta, things Clara couldn't taste. Her throat was too tight. So what do you want? She asked. Really? I want my son's name cleared. I want proof that he died trying to do the right thing, not proof that he was a criminal. Marco met her eyes. And I want you safe. Those are my terms. In exchange for what? In exchange for the ledger. You give it to me, I make sure the parts about your father's attempted peace deal, his cooperation with the Morettis, his desire to go legitimate, all of that gets preserved, gets documented, gets turned over to the FBI as proof that he was trying to help, not hurt. And the rest of it? The evidence of crimes, murders, bribes? That stays buried. Marco's voice was firm. The people involved are either dead or have paid their debts. Dragging it all out now only hurts the living. It also lets guilty people walk free. It lets innocent people stay alive. Marco leaned forward. You think Adrian Moretti wants the world to know his father was a murderer? You think he wants his son to grow up with that legacy? If you release that ledger, you destroy him and yourself, and everyone connected to both families. Clara felt the trap closing. So you want me to bury the truth to save everyone's reputation. I want you to be smart enough to know when the truth does more harm than good. Marco studied her. You're not a child anymore, Clara. You're a woman who survived 5 years on your own. You understand that the world isn't black and white. Sometimes the right thing is the hard thing, the complicated thing, the convenient thing, the survivable thing. Their entrees arrived. Pasta that Clara pushed around her plate. Marco ate methodically, unhurried, like he had all the time in the world. Adrian Moretti made you the same offer, didn't he? Marco said finally. He wants the ledger, too. Wants to use it to destroy me, protect his father's memory, secure his family's future. How's that different from what I'm asking? He didn't threaten me. He didn't need to. He just offered you protection and made you dependent on him. Marco's smile was knowing. You're living in his home, eating his food, taking care of his family. How long before those obligations turn into chains? Clara's stomach twisted because he was right. She was trapped in the penthouse as surely as she'd been trapped running from Marco. So what's your counteroffer? She asked. What do I get that's better than what Adrian's giving me? Freedom. Real freedom. Marco pulled an envelope from his jacket, slid it across the table. New identity, completely clean. Birth certificate, passport, driver's license, credit history, going back 10 years. You become someone new, someone with no connection to either family. Clara stared at the envelope. And in exchange, the ledger, all copies, and your word that you disappear. No contact with Adrian Moretti, no contact with me, no contact with anyone from your old life. Marco's voice was gentle. You walk away, Clara. You get the fresh start you've been running toward for 5 years. It was everything she'd wanted, everything she dreamed about during those long nights in terrible apartments, working terrible jobs, living a terrible half-life. Complete freedom. A real future. All she had to do was betray Adrian. I need time to think, Clara said. You have until midnight tomorrow. After that, the offer expires. Marco stood, dropped cash on the table to cover the meal. Think carefully, Nipoti. Freedom is the only thing worth having in this world. Don't trade it for a man who's using you the same way I would have. He left through the back, moving quickly for an older man. Clara sat alone at the table, staring at the envelope, feeling like she was drowning. Rosa appeared at her elbow. You okay, girl? No? Want some advice? Does it cost anything? Rosa smiled. First piece is free. After that, you pay. She sat down in Marco's vacated chair. I've been running this restaurant for 43 years. You know how many deals I've seen made at these tables? How many promises exchanged? Clara shook her head. Hundreds, and you know what I learned? Rosa tapped the envelope. The people who offer you freedom are usually the ones trying to trap you. Real freedom you take. Nobody gives it. So what do I do?
You figure out what you're actually fighting for, because right now you're just running, and running gets you nowhere. Rosa stood, patted Clara's shoulder. Eat something. You're too skinny. Then go figure out what matters more, being free or being alive.
She walked away, leaving Clara alone with pasta she couldn't eat and an envelope that felt like poison. Clara's phone buzzed. Adrian. Status? She typed. Talking. No problems. Adrian. Be careful. Clara stared at those two words. Be careful. Like he was worried. Like he cared. She picked up the envelope, felt the weight of a new identity, a new life. Then she left it on the table and walked out. James was waiting 2 blocks away in the Mercedes. Clara climbed in without speaking. Mr. Moretti wanted me to take you straight home, James said. I need to make a stop first. Where? Clara gave him an address in Queens. James hesitated, then nodded. They drove in silence through traffic, across the bridge, into neighborhoods that got progressively worse. Finally, they pulled up outside a storage facility that looked like it should have been condemned years ago. Wait here, Clara said. Miss Bennett, please, just wait. She got out before he could argue. The storage facility was run by a man named Eddie, who didn't ask questions and didn't keep records. Clara had paid him in cash for 5 years to hold one small unit, 10 by 10, climate-controlled, locked with 3 different padlocks. She opened them one by one, her hands shaking. Inside was everything she'd taken when she ran, clothes she'd outgrown, photos of people she couldn't talk to anymore, and a fireproof safe containing a single leather ledger. Clara hadn't opened it in 3 years. Hadn't needed to. She'd memorized every page during the first 2 years of running. Now she pulled it out, felt the weight of her grandmother's last gift. The ledger was old, handwritten in Italian and Sicilian, pages yellowed and fragile. Inside were names, dates, amounts, proof of bribes to judges, politicians, police officers, proof of murders, arsons, extortion. 20 years of criminal enterprise documented in neat handwriting. And tucked in the back, separate pages that told a different story. The story of 2 men trying to escape. Of Antonio Moretti and Carlo Viscari, Clara's father, meeting in secret, planning to broker peace to go legitimate, to save their families from destruction. The story of how Antonio panicked when Carlo said he wanted to involve the FBI. How Antonio decided to destroy the evidence and everyone who could testify by burning down the warehouse where they'd been gathering information. The story of how Marco Viscari had hunted down Antonio and executed him, not for running an investigation, but for murdering Carlo. The whole truth. The complicated, messy, terrible truth that made everyone guilty and everyone innocent at the same time. Clara held the ledger against her chest and cried. She cried for her father, who'd tried to do the right thing and died for it. She cried for Antonio Moretti, who'd panicked and become a monster. She cried for Adrian's mother, who'd carried the truth for 20 years. She cried for Luca, who didn't deserve any of this. And she cried for herself, because she finally understood what she had to do. She put the ledger back in the safe, locked everything up, and walked back to the Mercedes. Home, she told James. She didn't leave the envelope at Lucia's by accident. She left it because Rosa was right. Freedom wasn't something someone gave you. It was something you fought for. And Clara was done running. Adrian was waiting when she got back. It was past midnight, but he was still in his office, still working, still pretending he wasn't worried. He stood when she entered. How did it go? Marco offered me a new identity, complete escape, new life. Adrian's face went carefully blank. In exchange for the ledger. And cutting off all contact with you. Smart. That way I can't use you to get to him. Adrian's voice was controlled. Are you taking it? No? Something in his expression cracked. Why not? Because I'm tired of running, and because... Clara took a breath. Because your son asked me to come back, and I don't break promises to kids. Adrian crossed the room in 3 steps and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was desperate and fierce and tasted like fear and relief and something neither of them had words for. Clara kissed him back, her hands in his hair, feeling like she was falling and flying at the same time. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian pressed his forehead to hers. I thought you were going to leave, he said quietly. I thought about it. And I'm here. Clara stepped back slightly. But we need to talk. About the ledger. About Marco. About what happens next. Okay? Adrian's hands were still on her waist, like he was afraid she'd disappear. Talk. The ledger proves everything. Your father's crimes, Marco's revenge, my father's attempt at peace, all of it. Clara met his eyes. If we release it, we destroy both families. But if we bury it, the people who died don't get justice. So what's the third option? We use parts of it. We give the FBI enough to shut down current operations, arrest people who are actively hurting others. But we keep the historical stuff, our fathers, out of it. Clara's voice was steady. We choose the living over the dead. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. My father killed 23 people, and my grandfather killed yours. And the cycle keeps going unless someone stops it. Clara touched his face. We can't change what they did, but we can choose not to pass it on to Luca, to the next generation. Marco won't agree to that. Marco wants his son's reputation saved. We can give him that. We can prove Carlo Viscari tried to broker peace, tried to go legitimate. That becomes his legacy instead of the crimes. And we just forget about the rest? We bury it, same as every other family that survived something terrible. Clara's voice was firm. We choose to move forward instead of backward. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he pulled her close again, holding her like she was something precious. Okay, he said. We try it your way. They spent the rest of the night planning. Adrian made calls to his FBI contact, arranged a meeting. Clara went through her memories of the ledger, deciding what could be shared, what had to stay hidden. By dawn, they had something that might work. By noon, they were sitting in a federal building in Lower Manhattan, across from an agent named Sarah Mitchell, who'd worked with Antonio Moretti 20 years ago. Agent Mitchell was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, skeptical. You're telling me you have evidence of ongoing RICO violations, she said, reviewing the documents Clara had prepared, copies of recent transactions, names of current players, proof of active crimes. But you're withholding historical information about the Viscari-Moretti conflict. The historical information involves people who are dead, Adrian said. The current information can actually save lives. And what do you want in exchange? Protection for Clara, immunity for anything she witnessed as a minor, and an agreement that the historical material stays sealed. Mitchell studied them both. You know I could subpoena that ledger, force you to turn over everything. You could try, Clara said, but the ledger is in a location you'll never find. And if I die or disappear before I'm ready to give it up, it gets automatically sent to every major news organization in the country. Everything, including proof that the FBI had an informant who murdered 23 people and you buried it. Mitchell's expression didn't change, but her knuckles went white on her pen. That's a bold threat, she said. It's a fact. Clara's voice was calm. I've been running for 5 years. I've gotten good at insurance policies. And if we agree to your terms, then you get enough evidence to take down the current Viscari operation. Arrest warrants for 15 major players, including Marco if you want him. Asset seizures. RICO convictions. Clara slid another folder across the table. You get to be the agent who finally brought down one of New York's oldest crime families. Mitchell read through the folder. Her expression shifted from skeptical to interested. This is good intelligence, she admitted. Really good. Where'd you get it? I'm a Viscari. I heard things growing up. And you're willing to testify? If Clara gets full immunity and protection, yes, Adrian said. Otherwise, the ledger disappears and you get nothing. Mitchell set down the folder. I'll need to run this up the chain, get approval from the assistant director. You have 48 hours, Clara said. After that, I'm disappearing again. And this time, nobody's finding me. They left Mitchell with the evidence and walked out into bright afternoon sunshine. Clara felt lighter somehow, like she'd been carrying weight for 5 years and finally set it down. You think she'll go for it? Adrian asked. Yeah, the evidence is too good to pass up. Clara took a breath. And even if she doesn't, at least we tried. What happens to Marco? That's up to him. If he backs off, leaves us alone, we leave the parts about Carlo out of it. His son's reputation stays intact. Clara looked at Adrian. But if he comes after us again, we release everything. Everything, Clara confirmed. Adrian took her hand. It was such a simple gesture, but it felt monumental. They walked back to the car where James was waiting, and Clara let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd found a way out of the maze their fathers had built. That night, Clara read to Luca in Italian before bed. Simple words, children's stories, nothing complicated. When she finished, Luca looked up at her. "You're staying, right? For real this time?" Clara glanced at Adrian, who was leaning in the doorway watching them. "Yeah," she said, for real this time." "Good," Luca yawned, "because Nonna likes you better than the nurses. And Papa is less angry when you're around." "I am not less angry," Adrian protested. "You smiled today. That's like a miracle." Luca grinned, then closed his eyes. Clara tucked him in, kissed his forehead, and followed Adrian out. In the hallway, Adrian pulled her close. "He's right, you know," he said quietly. "I am less angry." "That's because you're too exhausted to be angry." "No, it's because you're here." Adrian kissed her forehead, gentle this time. "And I'm starting to think that maybe that's enough." Clara wanted to say something meaningful, something profound. Instead, she just held on to him and let the moment be what it was. Imperfect, complicated, real. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Well played, Clara, but this isn't over. We'll talk again soon." Clara showed Adrian the message. "He knows what we're doing," she said. "Let him know. He can't stop it now." Adrian's voice was firm. "The FBI has the evidence. The deal's in motion. Marco's running out of moves. That's when people get dangerous." "Then we'll be ready." Clara hoped he was right. But part of her, the part that had survived 5 years by trusting her instincts, knew that Marco Viscari didn't give up that easily. And the war between their families wasn't over yet. 3 days after the FBI meeting, Marco made his move. It didn't come with explosions or gunfire like Clara had expected. It came at 2 a.m. with a phone call that woke the entire penthouse. Adrian answered on the second ring, his voice sharp with adrenaline. Clara sat up in the guest room bed, though lately she'd been spending more nights falling asleep on Adrian's office couch while they planned, and listened to the one-sided conversation. "When? How many? Is he hurt?" A pause. "Don't move him. I'm coming now." Adrian appeared in her doorway 30 seconds later, already pulling on clothes. Marco took Luca. Clara's blood turned to ice. "What?" "Swimming lesson this morning. The instructor was one of Marco's people. She didn't bring him back." Adrian's hands were shaking as he buttoned his shirt. "They're at the old Viscari warehouse in Red Hook, the one that burned." "That's not possible. That place was condemned." Marco had it rebuilt, secretly, been using it as a meeting place for years. Adrian's voice was deadly calm in a way that terrified Clara more than anger would have. "He wants to trade. Luca for the ledger. We can't. If we give him the ledger before the FBI moves, I don't care about the FBI." Adrian's control cracked. "He has my son, Clara. My 7-year-old son is with a man who's killed dozens of people." Clara's mind was racing. "This is my fault. He's using Luca to get to me. This is Marco's fault, and he's going to pay for it." Adrian grabbed his phone, started making calls. "I'm getting Luca back, with or without the ledger." "Adrian, wait. We need to think about this. I'm done thinking. I'm done planning. I'm done letting other people's wars hurt my family." He looked at her, and Clara saw something dangerous in his eyes. Something that reminded her exactly whose son he was. "You can come with me, or you can stay here. But I'm going." Clara made a decision that would have horrified her 5 years ago. "I'm coming, but we're doing this smart, not stupid. There's no smart way to negotiate with a man holding a child hostage. No. But there's a way to make sure we all walk out alive." Clara pulled out her phone, texted a number she'd been hoping she wouldn't need. "I have an idea. You're not going to like it." 20 minutes later, they were in the Mercedes with James driving like he was trying to qualify for NASCAR. Clara had made 3 calls, one to Agent Mitchell, one to Rosa Benedetti, and one to a number Marco had given her weeks ago for emergencies. "You called him?" Adrian said when he realized who she'd contacted. "You told Marco's second-in-command exactly where we'd be and what we were planning? Vincent Castellano isn't just Marco's second. He's the man I was supposed to marry, which means he has as much reason to hate Marco as we do." Clara watched the city blur past.
Marco trying to force that marriage alliance destroyed Vincent's engagement to someone he actually loved. He's been looking for a way out for years. And you trust him?
I trust that he wants Marco gone as much as we do, and right now that's enough. Clara's phone buzzed. She read the message, then showed it to Adrian. Vincent says Luca is safe. Marco's using him as leverage, but he won't hurt him. Not yet. Not yet isn't good enough. It's better than the alternative. They pulled up to the warehouse at 2:47 a.m. The building looked exactly like the photos Clara had seen in the ledger. 4 stories of brick and broken windows, the top floor still showing scorch marks from the fire 20 years ago. Yellow police tape that nobody had bothered to remove fluttered in the wind. Cars were parked in a semicircle outside. Expensive cars, black SUVs, vehicles that screamed money and violence. He brought an army, Adrian said.
So did we. Clara pointed to the unmarked vans parking 2 blocks away. Agent Mitchell had moved fast. The FBI's got snipers on the buildings across the street, SWAT team ready to move in if things go wrong. And if Marco sees them, then we're all dead and this becomes a federal case instead of a family problem. Clara took a breath. But he won't see them. Mitchell's good at her job. Adrian's phone rang. Marco's voice came through the speaker loud enough for Clara to hear.
Adrian, so glad you could make it. Come inside, alone. You too, Clara. Anyone else tries to enter and the boy loses a finger. The line went dead. Adrian stared at the warehouse like it was the gates of hell. If anything happens to Luca, it won't. Clara took his hand. We end this tonight, together. They walked to the entrance side by side. The door was open, light spilling out from inside. Music was playing, opera, something Italian and tragic. Inside, the warehouse had been transformed. The ground floor was clean, renovated, set up like some kind of twisted gentleman's club. Leather furniture, expensive art, a bar stocked with liquor that probably cost more than Clara's old apartment. And in the center of it all, sitting in a chair like a throne, was Marco Vescari. He looked older in person than he had at the restaurant. Tired. Like a man who'd been fighting for so long he'd forgotten what peace looked like. Luca sat on a couch nearby, unharmed but terrified. A woman Clara recognized, Vincent's sister, Sophia, sat beside him, reading a picture book, like this was a normal babysitting job. Papa! Luca tried to run, but Sophia held him gently. He's fine, Marco said. Scared, but fine. I'm not a monster, Adrian. I don't hurt children. You kidnapped my son. I borrowed him. There's a difference. Marco gestured to chairs across from him. Sit. We have business to discuss. Give me Luca first. Give me the ledger first. The ledger's not here, Marco smiled. I know, but you know where it is. And you're going to get it for me, or this situation becomes much more complicated. Adrian started to move forward, but Clara caught his arm. She stepped in front of him, facing Marco directly. You want the ledger? Fine. I'll give it to you, but first you're going to listen to what I have to say. Marco raised an eyebrow. Bold. I like it. Speak. You've been hunting me for 5 years because you want to protect my father's reputation. You want proof that Carlo Vescari wasn't a criminal, that he was trying to broker peace when Antonio Moretti killed him. Clara's voice was steady. I can give you that proof, but in exchange, you let go of this vendetta. You let me walk away. You let Adrian's family walk away. And you accept that the empire you built on blood and fear ends with you. Ends with me? Marco laughed. I've spent 40 years building this organization, and the FBI is about to tear it apart. Clara pulled out her phone, showed him photos of arrest warrants, 15 of your top people, including you, RICO charges, murder, racketeering. They move in 72 hours unless you agree to our terms. Marco's face went dark. You went to the FBI. I gave them enough to destroy your current operations. But I kept the historical stuff separate. The stuff about my father, about the fire, about how this whole war started, that's still protected. Clara met his eyes. I'm offering you a choice. You can go down fighting and take everyone with you, including my father's reputation. Or you can walk away, let your organization collapse, and preserve the one thing you actually care about, your son's legacy. My son's legacy is the family business. Your son's legacy is that he tried to do the right thing and died for it. That's worth more than any criminal empire. Clara's voice softened. Let him be remembered as the man who wanted peace, not the monster people think he was. Marco was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Vincent, who'd appeared from the shadows in the back of the warehouse. You knew about this? Marco asked. Vincent nodded. Clara contacted me yesterday, explained the situation, asked me to choose between loyalty to you and loyalty to the future. And you chose her? I chose survival. Because unlike you, I'm smart enough to know when a war's lost. Vincent's voice was calm, matter of fact. The FBI has everything. Your accountants, your judges, your politicians, all of it. The organization is done. The only question is whether you go to prison or you walk away. Walk away to what? I'm 73 years old. This organization is all I have. You have your granddaughter, Clara said quietly. And if you agree to our terms, you get to keep her. Marco looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time Clara saw something other than calculation in his eyes. She saw pain, regret, the ghost of the man he might have been if he'd made different choices 40 years ago. What are your terms? He asked finally. You let Luca go, right now. Then you meet with the FBI, give them everything they need to dismantle the current organization. In exchange, they grant you immunity for historical crimes, anything older than 10 years. Clara pulled out a document Agent Mitchell had prepared. You serve no prison time. You retire. Completely. You sell your assets, you disappear, and you never contact me or the Morettis again. And my son's reputation? The ledger proves he tried to broker peace with Antonio Moretti, that he wanted to go legitimate, that he died trying to save both families. Clara's voice was gentle. That becomes the official story. The FBI confirms it. The newspapers report it. Carlo Viscari becomes the tragic hero who died trying to end a war. Marco read the document slowly. Claire could see him calculating, weighing options, trying to find the trap. If I refuse? He asked. Then we release everything. Your son goes down in history as a criminal, you die in prison, and everyone connected to both families gets destroyed in the fallout. Adrian's voice was cold. That's not a threat. That's a fact. Marco looked at Luca, who was watching everything with huge, terrified eyes. Then he looked at Clara. You're so much like your grandmother, he said. She was always the smartest person in any room, made everyone think they were in charge while she quietly controlled everything. He set down the document. She'd be proud of you. I'm not doing this to make her proud. I'm doing this to survive. Survival is underrated. Marco stood slowly, like his bones hurt. Fine, I accept your terms. But I want one thing in addition. What? I want to say goodbye to you. Really say goodbye, not this hostile negotiation bullshit. Marco's voice cracked slightly. You're the last piece of my son I have left. Let me have 5 minutes. Then I'll sign everything, disappear, and you'll never see me again. Clara looked at Adrian, who nodded reluctantly. 5 minutes, she said. Then this is over. Marco gestured to a door at the back of the warehouse. In my office, private. Adrian tensed, but Clara shook her head. It's okay. I'll be fine. If he tries anything, then you burn down the world. I know. She squeezed his hand. 5 minutes. Marco's office was smaller than Clara expected. Neat, old-fashioned, photos on the walls of people she didn't recognize, family from generations ago probably. A picture of her father as a young man, smiling, looking nothing like the monster people described. He was 23 there, Marco said, noticing where she was looking. About to get married, about to take over the family business. He looked so happy. What happened? Life happened. Choices happened. The same thing that happens to everyone who thinks they can control fate. Marco sat down heavily. I loved him, your father. He was brilliant, kind, everything I wasn't. I pushed him into this life because I thought it would protect him. Instead, it killed him. You can't change that now. No, but I can make sure his daughter doesn't end up the same way. Marco pulled out a folder, handed it to her. This is everything. Bank accounts I've kept secret, property deeds, investment portfolios, about $40 million, all told. Clara stared at the folder. I don't want your money. It's not my money, it's your inheritance. Your father's share of everything we built. Marco's voice was firm. Take it. Use it. Start over somewhere far away from this nightmare. I'm not running anymore. I'm not asking you to run. I'm asking you to live. Really live. Not this half-life you've been surviving on. Marco stood, walked to the window. You care about Adrian Moretti. It wasn't a question. Clara didn't deny it. He's a good man. Better than his father. Better than me. Marco turned. But he's still damaged, still broken by what happened to his family. You stay with him. You're choosing to carry that weight. You take this money, you can go anywhere. Be anyone. Find someone who isn't haunted by ghosts. Maybe I like ghosts. Marco laughed, a real laugh this time. You're definitely a Viscari. He pulled her into a hug that Clara didn't resist. Be happy, Nipote. That's all I want. Be happy and be free and be nothing like the rest of us. When they walked back out to the main floor, Adrian had Luca in his arms, holding him like he'd never let go. Sophia was crying quietly. Vincent was on the phone with someone, speaking in rapid Italian. Agent Mitchell had appeared with her team, moving through the warehouse like they owned it. Mr. Viscari, Mitchell said. We have a lot to discuss. I'm aware. Marco gestured to the document Clara had given him, now signed. I assume this makes us partners in justice or some other bureaucratic nonsense? Something like that. Mitchell's expression was professionally neutral. You're going to need lawyers, good ones. I have excellent lawyers. They're expensive and morally flexible. Marco looked at Clara one last time. Take care of yourself. You too. Then Mitchell was leading him away, and Vincent was coordinating with the other men, and the whole criminal empire that had terrorized New York for 40 years was collapsing in real time. Adrian carried Luca to the car. The boy was asleep now, exhausted from fear and adrenaline. Clara watched Adrian's face as he settled his son in the back seat. The fierce protectiveness, the relief, the love that made him vulnerable in ways his business persona never allowed. Thank you, Adrian said when they were finally alone in the car, James driving them home through empty streets. For what you did. For saving him. I didn't save him. Marco was never going to hurt him. Marco would have used him as leverage forever. You cut that off. You ended it. Adrian's hand found hers in the darkness. You ended the whole damn war. We ended it. Together. They sat in silence for a while, watching Manhattan wake up around them. Sunrise was coming, painting the sky gold and pink and purple. The money Marco gave you, Adrian said carefully. That's enough to disappear. Start over anywhere in the world. Clara looked at the folder in her lap. $40 million. Freedom. Everything she dreamed about. Yeah, she said. It is. So what are you going to do? Clara thought about Luca asking her to teach him Italian, about Mrs. Moretti's face when she spoke in the old dialect, about Adrian's smile when he thought nobody was watching. She thought about 5 years of running, hiding, being afraid, and she thought about the last 3 weeks of standing still, fighting back, choosing to stay. I'm going to put most of it in a trust for Luca, she said finally, for college or whatever he wants to do when he's older, so he has choices we didn't have. Clara, that's your inheritance. I don't need $40 million. I need a job, a purpose, something that's mine. She looked at him. You still need someone to take care of your mother, to teach Luca Italian, to keep you from working yourself to death. That's not a real job. It's real enough for me. Clara squeezed his hand. I'm staying, Adrian, if you'll have me. Adrian pulled her close, kissing her like she was air and he'd been drowning. I'll have you, in whatever way you'll give me. Even if I'm terrible at this, at relationships and normalcy and being part of a family, especially then, because I'm terrible at it too. Adrian pressed his forehead to hers. We'll figure it out together. That's a terrible plan. Yeah, it is. They both laughed, exhausted and relieved and alive in a way that felt miraculous. 6 months later, Clara stood in the kitchen of the penthouse making breakfast while Luca practiced Italian phrases and Mrs. Moretti hummed along to opera on the radio. It was a Saturday morning, normal and domestic, and nothing like the life she'd imagined. The restaurant, Francesca's Trattoria, had been purchased by Adrian 2 months ago and completely renovated. Clara had been involved in every decision, from the menu to the decor to the hiring. It reopened as Lucia's Brooklyn, named after the original restaurant in Little Italy, and became one of the most sought-after reservations in the city. Marco had kept his word. He'd disappeared after his testimony helped the FBI dismantle the Viscari organization. 15 major arrests, millions in asset seizures, the end of an era. The newspapers ran stories about Carlo Viscari's attempted peace deal, his tragic death at the hands of a paranoid partner. Marco's son became a footnote in history, the man who tried to stop a war. Vincent Castellano had taken what was left of the legitimate businesses and turned them into something actually legal. He sent Clara a Christmas card with a photo of him and his fiancée, the woman he'd loved before Marco had tried to force the marriage alliance. Agent Mitchell had been promoted. She called occasionally to check in, make sure Clara was adjusting to normal life. And Adrian had slowly, carefully, let Clara into the parts of himself he usually kept locked away. The grief over his wife, the fear that he was failing Luca, the guilt about his father. They were both broken in different ways, but somehow they fit together anyway. "Clara, Papa says you're making pancakes wrong," Luca announced from the table. "Papa can make his own pancakes if he doesn't like mine," Clara called back. Adrian appeared in the doorway, coffee in hand, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt that made him look almost human. "I didn't say wrong, I said different." Different is code for wrong. Different is code for I'm terrified to criticize anything you do because you might leave. Clara turned, spatula in hand. "I'm not leaving." "You say that now. Wait until Luca becomes a teenager." "Then I'm definitely not leaving. Someone needs to protect you from that nightmare." Mrs. Moretti said something in dialect that made Luca laugh. Clara had been teaching him, both the old language and the new. He was getting good at it. Adrian came up behind Clara, wrapped his arms around her waist, rested his chin on her shoulder. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For staying. For choosing this. For choosing us." Clara leaned back against him, feeling the solid warmth of him, the safety of being held. "You make it sound like I had a choice." "You did? You always did." "Then I choose you, every day, even when you're terrible. Especially when I'm terrible." They stood there in the kitchen, surrounded by the chaos of family breakfast, and Clara thought about the girl she'd been 5 years ago, running, hiding, terrified of everything. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who'd learned that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was stop running, stand still, fight for the people who mattered. She'd learned that family wasn't about blood, it was about choice, about showing up, about staying even when it was hard. She'd learned that her father's mistakes didn't have to be her mistakes, that she could choose differently, be different. And she'd learned that love wasn't about perfection. It was about two broken people deciding that maybe, together, they could build something whole. Later that morning, after breakfast and dishes and Luca's swimming lesson, Adrian asked Clara to marry him. They were in the sunroom with his mother, who was having a good day, clear-eyed and present and happy in a way she hadn't been in years. Adrian got down on one knee with a ring that had belonged to his grandmother. Simple, elegant, old-fashioned. "I know we're terrible at this," he said. "I know we're both damaged and complicated and probably going to mess everything up. But I want to mess it up with you. Forever. If you'll have me." Clara looked at this man who'd hated her family, protected her anyway, chosen love over revenge. She looked at Luca, who was grinning so hard his face might split. She looked at Mrs. Moretti, who was crying happy tears and murmuring blessings in dialect. And she looked at herself, really looked at the woman she'd become. Not the frightened girl running from monsters, not the ghost hiding from the past, but someone real, someone whole, someone who'd survived hell and chosen to build heaven anyway. "Yes," she said, "I'll have you." Adrian slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her while Luca cheered and Mrs. Moretti clapped. And somewhere in the city below, life went on for millions of people who had no idea that a war had ended and a family had been reborn. The wedding happened 3 months later at Lucia's Brooklyn, small and intimate and perfect. Rosa Benedetti catered. Agent Mitchell came with her wife. Vincent sent champagne expensive enough to make Adrian wince. Elena cried through the entire ceremony. Luca was the ring bearer and took his job so seriously that Clara almost laughed. Mrs. Moretti sat in the front row wearing her best dress, lucid and present, holding a handkerchief Clara's grandmother had embroidered decades ago. Proof that some things survived even when everything else burned. Clara wore a simple white dress and carried flowers that smelled like Sicily. Adrian wore a suit that didn't cost a fortune, just looked good. They said their vows in English and Italian and that old dialect that nobody spoke anymore except the three of them. They promised to love each other through the mess and the damage and the ghosts. And when they kissed, it felt like coming home after years of being lost. The reception lasted until 2 in the morning. People danced and ate and celebrated the kind of happy ending that nobody thought was possible. At midnight, Clara slipped outside for air. The street was quiet, Brooklyn asleep around her. Adrian found her there, loosened his tie, stood beside her in comfortable silence. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" "About how 5 years ago I was terrified every second of every day. And now I'm married to a billionaire in a restaurant I helped design, surrounded by people who chose to love me even though they didn't have to." Clara smiled. "It's weird." "Good weird or bad weird?" "Good weird, really good weird." Adrian pulled her close. "We did it, you know. We actually survived." "We did more than survive. We lived." Clara looked up at him. "We chose to live instead of just exist. That's not nothing." "No, it's everything." They stood on the street in Brooklyn, two people who'd been broken by their families' wars and had chosen to build something better, something that belonged to them instead of their fathers. And in that moment, Clara finally understood what her grandmother had been trying to teach her with that ledger. It wasn't just evidence of crimes. It was proof that people made choices, terrible choices, complicated choices, choices that echoed across generations. But it was also proof that those choices didn't have to be permanent, that you could choose differently, break the cycle, build something new. The ledger was still in a safe somewhere, insurance against Marco changing his mind. But Clara didn't think about it much anymore. She was too busy living to worry about the past. Years later, when Luca asked about how his father and Clara had met, they told him an edited version, a story about a restaurant and a stormy night, and two families who'd been fighting for so long they'd forgotten why. They told him about choosing love over revenge, about how the bravest thing you could do was forgive, about how family wasn't about blood, it was about showing up even when it was hard. They didn't tell him about the ledger or the warehouse or the night his grandfather had been kidnapped. Some truths were too heavy for children, but they taught him about choice, about how every day you got to decide who you wanted to be, how you didn't have to repeat your parents' mistakes, how you could look at the mess of your family history and decide to build something better. And when Luca grew up and made his own choices, good ones and bad ones and complicated ones, Clara hoped he'd remember that. She hoped he'd know that he wasn't trapped by his bloodline or his history or the wars that came before him. She hoped he'd choose to live, really live, not just survive, because in the end, that was all anyone could do. Make choices, live with them, try to do better tomorrow than you did today. Clara had spent 5 years running from her past, and she'd spent the rest of her life building a future. That seemed like a fair trade. The night of Luca's 18th birthday, Clara gave him a gift, an envelope containing documents, proof that the trust fund his grandfather had established was now his to control. $40 million, grown to 60 through smart investments. "What am I supposed to do with this?" Luca asked, overwhelmed. "Whatever you want. Start a business, travel the world, give it all away, blow it on terrible decisions." Clara smiled. "The point is, you get to choose. Did you ever think about what you would have done if you'd kept it?" Clara looked at Adrian, who was watching them with the kind of pride that made her chest ache. She looked at the home they'd built, the life they'd created, the family they'd chosen. "I did exactly what I would have done," she said. "I invested it in you." Luca hugged her, this boy who'd become a young man, who'd survived loss and fear and learned to love anyway. "Thank you," he said, "for everything, for staying, for choosing us. Thank you for giving me a reason to." Later, when everyone had left and the penthouse was quiet, Adrian found Clara on the terrace looking out at the city. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything. Nothing." Clara leaned against him. "How we got here. How we almost didn't. How lucky we are that we did. Luck had nothing to do with it. You fought for this. You chose this." "We chose this," Clara corrected. "Together." They stood on the terrace overlooking Manhattan. Two people who'd been given every reason to destroy each other and had chosen to build something instead. Below them, the city glittered and pulsed and lived. Millions of people making millions of choices, writing their own stories, building their own futures. And somewhere in all that chaos, a quiet waitress and a broken billionaire had found each other and decided that maybe, just maybe, love was worth fighting for. Not perfect love, not easy love, but real love, complicated love, the kind that survived storms and wars and family curses, the kind that lasted. Clara never went back to the storage unit, never retrieved the ledger, let it sit there gathering dust, a piece of history that didn't need to be remembered. Because the only history that mattered was the one they were writing now. And that story, messy and imperfect and beautifully human, was just beginning.